here in Manila, and good afternoon in Africa.
I'm in Johannesburg. Yes, in Africa. That's right.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you very much for accepting my request, no, to give a talk, not a talk, but share experience about the vows, because you are as a priest, as a religious, a Jesuit. So I want you to share about the experience about the vows, so that people can know about what is really vows, because some people still wondering what are they doing there in their congregation. They live without a wife, they live without children, so what do they do there? So maybe this is a good time for you to explain what is the vow is and what is the importance of the vow is. So without further ado, welcome Father Peter Knox. Is a prominent Jesuit. He is a great theologian, and he
Oh,
is a
stop.
Jesuit from Africa. So, welcome, Father Peter.
Thank you very much indeed, Brother Ilo. Thank you for inviting me to share some thoughts and some experiences with you. It's a pleasure to see you again, and it's a pleasure to be talking to your audience. Some of you may remember that we've had some previous conversations last year when I was still in Manila. Um, so, what are the vows? The vows are a way for people, or different ways, in fact, for people to attach themselves closely to Christ, to try to live as Christians, to try to live an intense life with Christ. There are very, very many different vows that Christians take and can take. Some of them are private vows and kind of others are very public vows, like marriage, for example, is a very public vow when a man and a wife most usually say that we're going to live together for the rest of our lives and we'll have children, we'll have a family. Other people take vows not to, well, it's not a vow not to have children or not to be married. They say, my primary concern in my life is to be a person living with Jesus, for Jesus, accompanying Jesus in an apostolic lifestyle in a way that I'm a little bit more free than I would be if I was tied to my wife or to my husband. So I want to be a Christian as they are being Christians. There's no comparison, one is better than the other. That's not the question at all. But it's a different lifestyle of living with Jesus. The most classical vows, the ones that are taken kind of by most people who live in religious communities, are the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. And we'll discuss those in a while. But there are some other religious congregations, for example, historically, the Benedictines take a vow of stability. So in addition to poverty, chastity, and obedience, they take a vow of stability. That means they promise to remain within that same monastery or wherever their mission, they will stay there, stable until the end of their lives. There are some vows which a person takes when he's becoming ordained a deacon. The bishop asks you, do you promise to do the prayer of the church? Yes, that means we do morning and evening prayer. We commit ourselves to pray with the church using the liturgy of hours. The bishop also asks you, do you promise obedience to your ordinary? That means the person who's becoming a deacon says in public, yes, I will be obedient to my bishop if I'm a diocesan priest, or I will be obedient to my legitimate superior if he's a religious priest or deacon at the point. Do you promise a vow of celibacy? And so deacons, so when you become a deacon, you take a public vow of celibacy. Jesuits take a fourth vow as well, as the Benedictines take a fourth vow. Jesuits might take a vow of, at final vows, of being obedient to the Pope regarding missions. So Pope Leo can ask Ilo, when he takes final vows, Ilo, please, I'd like you to go and work in Johannesburg because there are great needs in Johannesburg. So Ilo, who is now a priest, he's taken final vows. He says, okay, Pope Leo, you understand what the needs are. I will go and work in Johannesburg, or I will go and work in Mozambique. because I speak Portuguese. I've got some talents that can be used there. So there are very many different vows. We have two colleagues here at the Jesuit Institute who are women who've taken private vows not to get married, to be to give their lives in service of the church. And they work with us in Ignatian spirituality. And they are what we, in some places, we call consecrated virgins. They've given their virginity to Christ, and they've decided for the rest of their lives they will live as single women at the service of the church. That doesn't mean that they're better than their sisters or brothers who've got married. It just means that they've chosen to work within the parameters of the church as consecrated virgins, as consecrated people who've set their lives on a particular track, a particular lifestyle, living with God, or for God, in the service of God. They both have their own houses, they both have their own cars, but their family situation is such that they're not getting married, they're not having children, they want to work full-time for the church, or for Jesus Christ, actually, in the context of the church. So that's generally a background to vows. And vows have existed pretty well since the start of Christianity. People have made their own commitments to live with Jesus, to live for Jesus, for one reason or another. Then to go through the most common vows, the ones that most religious take, the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, those are the vows that we have religious taking across the world. And when Elo took his first vows at the end of his novitiate, he promised poverty, chastity, and obedience, and he promised to enter the Society of Jesus when the time comes. That means at final vows, he's promised that he will enter the Society of Jesus and he'll become a full-fledged final vow Jesuit. Chastity and obedience, they're the common vows which people take when they're entering religious life, and they're saying, I'm going to follow Jesus Christ, or attach myself to Jesus Christ, attach myself to this religious family in a particular way. I want to be attached to our Lord, and I'm joining this family, I'm joining the Jesuits, or the Redemptorists, or the Benedictines, or the Franciscans, or this particular family rather than another family. And then the vows mean different things for different religious families. For example, if you're a Franciscan and you've got a very strict observance of the vow of poverty, then possibly you will really, really live in difficult circumstances. For the Jesuits, our vow of poverty means that we share things in common, that everything that we have belongs to the community, and we use what we need to use. In function of our being members of the community, we receive what we need for the mission that we're doing. So, for example, I'm speaking to you on a computer at the moment because I'm a teacher. I need a computer, I need a laptop. And so it's not my laptop, but it's the laptop which the Society of Jesus has given to me in order to use it for the apostolate which I've been given, that is teaching. And my previous laptop was 8 or 9 years old. I didn't replace my laptop every 2 or 3 years, the way some people do who are living in a commercial life, or who are living in a much more capitalistic world. I'm not responding to all the advertisements which are telling me you must get a new phone, you must get a new computer, you need something bigger, better, brighter, bolder, newer, with more memory. We use what we need for our apostolate. So I have the use of a motor car here in Johannesburg because public transport is very poor. It's not my car. We call it by the name. This is a Prius. So it's called the Prius, and other people, members of the community, are able to use that as well. I'm the one who's responsible for the maintenance of it and to make sure that it has petrol when necessary, but it's not my car. And I think poverty is about living a simple lifestyle, trying to be like my parents' family, for example, a family of modest means, not a family which has enormous wealth. Here in Johannesburg, for example, I know in Manila at the Loyola School of Theology, or the Jesuit community there, people live simple lifestyles. We're not living in great luxury. Our food is modest. Our diet is simple and ordinary. We're not living on a level above what we lived when we joined the society. Also, poverty for me means I'm not a slave to possessions. I'm not defined by what car I drive, what computer I use, what cell phone I use. I'm not defined by the clothes that I wear. I wear simple clothes. Some of them, Ilo may remember, are fairly old and fairly tattered clothes. And it's not my whole sense of identity is not tied up with the things that I use. I use because they're necessary for the apostolate. I try to live on the same level as my family. We're encouraged in the Society of Jesus to share everything in common, to hold things in common. Nobody has independent income, so we depend on the community for our sustenance. So a salary that I receive, which I receive from the Jesuit Institute, comes to the community. And then I request the community, please may I have so much money for petrol every month. I have a budget for petrol. I have a budget for toiletries, for toothbrush and things like that. So everything I have comes from the community. I'm dependent on the community. I don't have a separate bank account. My bank account is the account of the community. And so the card that I use for purchasing is a card belonging to the community. And so our poverty is more about sharing things in common and trying to support people who work with us, people who are dependent on us in the community. We try to support them so that they can live a dignified life. So even our workers, the people who clean for us, the people who work in the garden, we try to make them living in a kind of dignified lifestyle. Poverty is also about being detached from the compulsion that the world gives us, that we have to buy all the time. Wherever you see advertisements, they're not telling you live a simple life, live a humble life. They're telling you always get this wonderful office furniture or get that fantastic cell phone. You will be so much happier. You'll be a fulfilled person. No, we try to be detached from all of that. This commercialism, this consumerism. Pope Francis, in his encyclical on Care for Our Common Home, his encyclical 2015, Laudato Si, we're celebrating the 10th anniversary of it last month, Pentecost of this year, 2025. He's telling us that we don't need to be buying all the time. We need a simple lifestyle. The earth cannot support people who just acquiring more and more and more stuff, because some enormous percentage of the people live in poverty, while maybe 10% of the people have more than they can possibly live with and more than they can possibly use. And so poverty is about living with the minimum that we need to live with. Poverty isn't about comparing ourselves. When I was in Manila, there were people who were really, really poor, people living in payatas, people living in the slums. And if I got poverty wrong, then I'd feel guilty, the fact that I've got a clean pair of shoes, or I've got a decent shirt, or my vestments are clean. I would feel guilty because I'm not as poor as those people are. And I think that's a kind of a distortion of poverty. Poverty isn't about being absolutely penniless. Poverty is about, what does God want me to do? How is God going to give me the means to do it through the community? Poverty is also about, it's become for me something about being aware of my carbon footprint, being aware of the footprint that I leave on the earth, being aware of how much of the resources I use, how much carbon dioxide I put out, how much global greenhouse gases I put out. Poverty is about trying to live at peace with the world, with the environment, trying to live in a way that isn't going to hurt the environment for the other people who share the environment with me, but it's also about not hurting the environment as such. You know, the animals, the birds, the trees have a right to life, and I have no right to deprive them of their health and their goodness. So I think a lot can be said about poverty. Many people try to kind of really get into poverty, and people are humble and people have their own way of being attached to Christ. We see Jesus tells us that the birds of the air have their nests, the foxes have their holes, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. And so we're trying to live as Jesus did, without kind of saying, this is mine, this is my nest, or this is the hole that the mansion that I'm going to live in. Poverty is about kind of trying to live a life that Jesus lived. The second vow is about chastity. Chastity, so Elo has already raised the question for us. It's about not having family, and it's strange, and people look at you and say, why are you living like this? You 50 men, or in my case here in Johannesburg, 10 men living together in the same house. You don't have a wife, you don't have children, you don't have attachments to one particular person, you don't have a single, loving, supporting sexual relationship, you don't have the obligations of family. This is strange. This is not the way God designed people to be. Right at the beginning, in the book of Genesis, we're sort of given a model of Adam and Eve, the model of the nuclear family. And people will say, what you guys are doing is sort of going against that. Well, we're not going against anything. We're not trying to be against anything or anyone. We're just saying that we find it easier to live with Christ and to have our mission with Christ and to share our mission with Christ, living without the attachment of a family, without obligations to put my children through school, to make sure my children have shoes and socks and school uniforms and books. We don't have to worry about our wife and the health of our wife or our husband. We're kind of much more free to follow our mission, the mission that's given to us. And when you get to my age, when you get into your 60s, you look back on life and you say, what am I leaving? I'm leaving no children. I've got no family behind me. But I look back on my life and I say, I've worked with wonderful people and I've generated, so this thing of generativity, I've helped many young people to grow in a good way. And so I can look across the Indian Ocean, and I can look at friends I have in East Timor. I can look at friends in Manila and say, I've done something to raise these children. They're not my children, but these are young people to whose life I've contributed something. The love I have is not the love of a husband and a wife. The love I have is love in a wider community. Of course, sometimes I'm lonely. Of course, sometimes I would love just to hug someone or to feel the closeness of a close friend or a partner. Of course, that's natural. Everybody wants that. But we're really saying that that's a price that I'm prepared to pay. That's something I want to put aside for following Christ within the community. And the community gives me space, the community gives me friendship and companionship that I don't really need all the time to be in love. There have been moments in my life when I've been in love, when I've had a very particular person I've really cared for, and we've spent a lot of time together, and you don't want to go down that road too often, because then your attachment to the community becomes a little bit weaker. If you're just thinking about your lover all the time and Christ has somehow been displaced or put aside because you're focusing on your lover all the time, then that's kind of maybe not the way chastity should be lived. And I think many of us have that temptation. Many of us go through that in some stage in our lives. Some of us are blessed that we kind of navigate that and we find peace with that, and we can live kind of in real peace and contentment as members of a community with great joy with our brothers, or if you're a woman, with your sisters in the community. It's important to know that love is not a sin. what my parents do, my parents having 6 children, there's nothing inferior about that. There's nothing second class about that. There's no kind of greater virtue in the celibate lifestyle than in the married lifestyle. My parents have also had their moments of joy and temptation, their moments of great, great intense love, their moments where they've been kind of at loggerheads with each other, or they've had arguments and fights. I think that's normal in any relationship. And it's normal between brothers in the Society of Jesus. It's normal between a husband and a wife. It's normal between anybody in a relationship. And chastity doesn't protect us from that. Chastity doesn't mean that we don't see difficulties or gaps in other people's lives. We don't see in ourselves a need to be connected. Connection is the way God made us. God wants us to be connected, and I think it's important for us to find an appropriate way of living our connection. It's perfectly okay to hug someone and even my mother, I kiss her when I say goodbye to her. It's okay. It's not like breaking my vow of chastity. At least that's not the way I understand the vow of chastity. I hug my friends when we leave at the end of an evening. That's the end of the story until we see each other again. He's living a life of chastity. I am living a life of chastity. We try to live as Jesus would have us live. We also have from the Gospels no evidence that Jesus was married or Jesus had children. We try to live the way Jesus lived. These vows are sometimes called evangelical counsels. Evangelical meaning living the gospel, the good news, and counsels, the way we do it, the way Jesus did. So we try to imitate Jesus in his detachment from the world. We know he had very, very good friends like John, the beloved disciple. We believe he had a fantastic relationship with Mary of Magdala, the one who was really, really close to him, but there's no evidence at all that Jesus had a very physically intimate relationship with them or that he had any children. And so we try, based on what we know about Jesus in the gospel, we try to live that same lifestyle, that same set of relationships. Then the final vow that we'll discuss, the normal vow that we discuss, is the vow of obedience. Jesus, again, if we're modeling our lives on Jesus, he makes it very clear in his farewell discourse in John's Gospel that I did not come to do my own will, but the will of the one who sent me. The Holy Spirit, whom I'm sending, is not going to be doing his own mission or her own mission. The Holy Spirit is doing the mission which is given from me and is given by the Father, and the Holy Trinity has a whole mission to create, to redeem, and to save the world. And we, as followers of Jesus, want to get caught up in that same mission, the mission of Jesus, to help to redeem, to save the world, to try to lift up the world, to try to make life better from everyone around us, for everyone around us. One of the questions that Elo sent me last week is, isn't this a lack of freedom? Aren't we surrendering our own will? Well, we still have our will, but everybody has a limit to their freedom. Everybody's freedom is limited in some way or another. I can't just go out, if I were a married person, I couldn't just go out and say I'm going to live now in let's say Harare, the capital of Zimbabwe. I would have to think of, why am I going there? Can my family come with me? If my superior, and I listen to the legitimate request of my superior, if he sees a need of the apostolate in this province here in Southern Africa, then he says to me, Peter, I'd like you to meet that need. I'd like you to be engaged in that need. Or if there's another need elsewhere, he's saying, you've got the skills, you've got the talent, you've got the ability to go and work there. Peter, would you please do that? So it's somewhat paradoxical that as we become more attached to the will of God and we try to do the will of God, we have to surrender our own possible will. But in fact, we get happier by doing the will of God. God has given us talents and skills and abilities. God has given us inclinations, and these inclinations are what are going to make us most fulfilled at the end of the day. I'm a teacher, for example. So God says, go and teach. And it's not like I'm going to be miserable doing that. It's because God has given me certain ability, and this is where I can serve Him and serve the church and copy somewhat what Jesus has done. I'm surrendering my autonomy. The society today, or the world today, or certainly Western society, tells everybody that you must be autonomous, you must be independent, you must be able to survive by yourself, you must be completely free, you must be able to go where you want to go, have a holiday in Europe, have a holiday in the United States, do what you like, when you like, as you like. That's unrealistic. That's possibly a little bit selfish, that kind of autonomy, just living for myself because I want to do what I want to do. My own will is really to do the will of the one who sent me. Just as Jesus says there, I came to do the will of the one who sent me. And that's where we get our most satisfaction, I think, to be doing an apostolate as Jesus did his apostolate, using the skills that God has given us. Ultimately, the vows are not about what we do. I'm doing this, I'm doing obedience, I'm doing the mission, I'm doing that. But the vows become who we are. After years and years and years, you sort of grow into the vows, and the vows become your identity. It becomes who I am, not the things that I'm doing. Because there are wonderful teachers who are lay people, who are married, who go and work on a mission or something like that. They're wonderful people who are not religious, who are not living religious vows, but they've got a different identity. And the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience become our identity. I can relate to this man on the screen in front of me because we've got something in common. Our vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, and entering the society of Jesus. This gives us a connection in a way that I'm not connected to my brothers and my sisters and my nephews and nieces. So the vows become who we are, not specifically what we do. And the vows are different in different religious families. Let me stop there for the moment. And maybe, Elo, you have some questions to feed back to me or something?
Father, it was a nice sharing, no, about the vows, no. Actually, what comes to my mind is the vow does not enslave us. Actually, the vows, no, liberates us and give us freer. I mean, free not in a sense that we do what we want, but the freer that we are able to do the mission of the Lord. So I think that the vows is really important for us. My question is about the vows, Father. Is it okay that the vow can also apply to ordinary people, or if you think that it is okay to apply, which one is more reliable that we can apply in the ordinary people, especially the marriage, because the vows is also important. That it's not only for the religious, but in some way in the ordinary people or the family, the couples also can also practice the vows.
Okay, thanks, Elo. Yes, I think certainly married couples are expected to be chaste. They can have relationships, obviously. They have sexual relationships, which are not appropriate for us. But I mean, married people have to stick with their spouse. When they take a vow, they say something like, or along the lines of, I will forsake all others. I will not go looking around to other women. I will not go looking around to other men. I will forsake everybody, and I will concentrate my love on you, my wife, or my husband. And so, in a way, chastity, which we express in a different way as religious, is also expected of married people. They live a life of chastity, dedicated to one another. Sometimes they get kind of distracted from their spouse, but really when they take the vow of, when they make their marital vows, they're saying, I'm going to live for you and only for you and my children for the rest of my life. About poverty, nobody idolizes poverty. Poverty is not a virtue. Okay, let me say this again. Poverty by itself is not a good thing. If it means that people are suffering and struggling and they can't meet their needs and can't feed their family, poverty in some cases, like in Africa, is a great evil. Poverty where people can't survive, where people can't raise their children, is an evil. It's not something that we say this is somehow baptized and we think, oh, all these wonderful poor people are somehow blessed. I think poverty, when it's a result of injustice, like more people are consuming more of the goods of the earth than they could possibly need, and therefore other people are not getting what they basically need. We look at refugees, we look at starving people in Sudan at the moment. About 1/3 of the population of the entire country of Sudan is starving. They're challenged by food, they've got food insecurity. Poverty is not good. But we can say, I can live in a simple lifestyle, and families can live a simple lifestyle. Families, of course, always want to make provision for their children, make sure the children can go to the better schools or get a good education, or that the children are living healthily. But at some stage, too much is too much. And you just don't need to accumulate more and more and more and more. And I think most normal families are living within their means and not trying to be multi-billionaires or multi-millionaires. I think the accumulation of wealth in the hands of some people when others are starving to death, that's a great evil in the world. And that's not really poverty as such, but just the bad distribution of the goods of the earth. Pope Francis writes about that in Laudato Si number 50. He says that it's not about the population issue, it's that some people have more than they could possibly need. And certainly let's talk about married people and their obedience. Okay, it used to be that the wife was obedient to the husband. Well, come on. We're living in the 21st century now. We don't expect a wife to be obedient to her husband, but wives and husbands have to come to agreements, negotiations. They have to work out, what are we going to do? What work are we going to do? Who's going to feed the children? Who's going to stay at home and look after the family? Who's going to do what? It's not like these things are cast in stone and every society has to have particular strict gender roles. Many societies, my mother, for example, used to earn more than my father. My mother was better qualified than my father. She worked only half the day, whereas my father had to work the full day to sort of come up with something similar in the salaries. So not every family has to have kind of the wife stays at home and feeds the children, the husband goes out to work. I think obedience means we surrender our autonomy, we give our autonomy to the other person, and we say, how do we work in the world together? How do we fit in the world together as a married couple? So they don't take vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. The whole lifestyle that they live is a vow of commitment to one another and to the future together.
As earlier you mentioned about your life, no, as in this age, in your age, and then you look back the past years, that you see the meaningful life, the beautiful things that you have done then. So Father, what things that you experience that is like meaningful to you in this age, and in relation to the vows, that actually these vows liberates me to do many things in the past or in the present. What do you see the beautiful things or meaningful things that you did in the past?
Okay, thanks, Ilo. So, I mean, you're asking for personal experience. I trained as an industrial chemist. So, before I joined the Jesuits, I was working for a chemical company which did enormous environmental damage. And I went and spoke to the manager, to the director of the company, and I said, "Look what's going here. We're putting out all of this pollution into the atmosphere. It's kind of we can see it. We know that it's happening." And the guy just told me, "Peter, keep quiet. We'll fix your car." So my car got changed the color from white to orange. "We'll fix your car, but don't do anything about it." I think as a religious, I don't have to obey somebody like that who's doing something very, very obviously wrong. I think I'm liberated to be able to speak a little bit more freely. I can say what I want to say, what I feel is correct to say. I can say what I think the gospel is calling us to say, respecting human life, respecting the dignity of people, respecting kind of the fact that people have different gender notions now than they do in mainstream society. We can say all sorts of things. We can be more prophetic as religious than people who have to get up in the morning, go to the job, earn money because their family depends on them for so much. We can be more prophetic and we can speak the truth to power as Jesus used to do. Jesus used to speak to the religious leaders of his time, the Jewish religious leaders, and say, "This is not right. You're oppressing people, or you've just misunderstood some of the laws about purity, or some of the laws about the cult," for example. Jesus could speak truth to power, and I think the vows or the religious life give us the freedom to do that as well. You can see a number of people who've been killed. Many of them are religious, martyrs. We've just had one who was canonized, who was beatified last week in DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, because a layman who refused to be corrupted, who refused to give the permission to sell contaminated rice to the people of his town in the eastern DRC in Goma. I think vows put us in a space where we're more able to be apostles of Jesus and to speak with the voice of Jesus. And I think that's really important for us. And the community supports us in a way that maybe a married couple wouldn't have the same strength of support.
I think this is the last question that I am going to ask.
Okay.
What message do you want to say to the Jesuits, especially the young Jesuits, scholastics like us, that to consider and value the vows, no, that we have taken? So, because you see, the vows liberates you to speak the truth according to the Gospels. So, what do you want to say to the young Jesuits in this area of technology and AI and many things that happen in this time?
I'd say to young Jesuits and to young religious, let's appreciate our vows. Sometimes they will be challenging for us. Sometimes they will not be easy, but there are also challenges and difficult times in every walk of life, whether you're married, whether you're single, whether you've got a partner. There are always challenges in life, and the vows are a precious gift. And you've given yourself to the church in a public way. We've given ourselves to the church in the public way. Let's try to live in a way that's appropriate for the message that we're giving, to make a statement. There's no point in living our lives kind of split with a split mentality. It's like schizophrenia. I really, really want to have, and I'm really trying to live like a wealthy man, and yet my public pronouncement is a life of poverty. I'm trying to have 2 or 3 girlfriends, but my public pronouncement is a life of celibacy. Or I'm totally disobedient to my superior, and yet everybody thinks I'm doing what the superiors request me to do. Let's try to live with integrity. I think that brings us peace and contentment at the end of the day. If you find that the vows don't fit you, or you don't fit the vows, maybe it's possible that there should be another way of life for you, or you just allow the vows to become you, to become who you are, to kind of shape who you are. And it's not about my complete autonomy. Ultimately, I live my life in dependence on God and in dependence on the society. Okay.
So, Father Peter, thank you very much for this very nice conversation, especially the sharing about the life and the vows that is really meaningful to us as a religious. At the same time, they're also meaningful to the families, which is not really fully taking the vows the family, but in some way they also commit themselves to it, because it is really important for the family and for the children. At the same time, for us religious, it is required that, because it liberates us to serve more people according to the gospel. So thank you for your insights, knowledge, and experience for this sharing. So I continue to pray for you, and please still be available when I ask you to share more, because I think it is really helpful because you're very knowledgeable in this kind of experience. So it will help me and help others also to know more about our life and our mission as a religious and as a family. So once again, Father, thank you very much for this.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Ilo, and God bless you and God bless our brothers in the community. Okay.
Thank